quarrel about the night allowance. Is this a night robbery, or are we simply failing to do the math? Punguza mzigo, but where does it hurt the most? Also on the show tonight, the kicker, the punchline, the take, and the angle. Sadly, we won't have the memo because we won't have Jamila as well. She's on assignment tonight. But let's begin with that big fight from the August House. Just who is disturbing the honorable members as they quietly enjoy the perks they so badly deserve and need? Let's hear them out.
The judgment which was given in October last year was very, very particular about state officers. But they are saying we are a different category of state officers. Excuse me, Lynn Mangich. How dare you think we are different? Did you come here just the other day? We vetted you here and we decided to give you this job. We didn't give you a job to come and vilify us. We didn't give you a job to come and show us your hatred for us.
Excuse me, lady and gentlemen.
Excuse you.
The optics, Joe. First, the optics look really, really bad for Naomi Shaban. It's not exactly a literal food fight. You shouldn't look angry like that. Express yourself like a member of parliament. Reason with us. Reason with the people you're talking to. State things. State your case properly. Why are you looking angry like somebody grabbed food from your plate and you can actually physically go fight? Number two is what she says there. She says of Mengich, we gave you a job. We gave you a job.
And it was not to vilify us. Yes, yes.
Here is a person who is not thinking institutions. She is in her own world. That is the world where the members of parliament are. They think it's a favor they did to Mengich. They gave her a job. They're not thinking of SRC as an institution of the constitution that is supposed to help the country when it comes to public service salaries. They're looking at it as, we gave you a job, so why are you getting a tax?
Something that happened with Serem. You remember Sarah Serem when she was being vetted? When she had even left that job, now she wants to be an ambassador.
So the conversation is taking place at a really low level, at a food fight level. It's basically a scramble.
Franncis, what is this between MPs and the SRC? Because it seems that it is more than meets the eye.
Well, yes. In fact, talking about grabbing some food, there's a grabbing of sorts here because it is grabbing of perks, allowances.
Which they already had. And
which they already have. Particularly the house allowance, which they had given themselves or which they said they deserved, and even backdated to October last year. And they relied on a judgment or a ruling by Justice Chacha Mwita that every employer or every employee deserves or is entitled to housing benefit or house allowance. It is on that basis. It was a matter that was filed by deputy governors. And so what the Parliamentary Service Commission did was to latch onto that ruling.
But Franncis, my understanding of law in a very basic way would suggest this way, that this was a ruling that was made and the orders were given to SRC to begin with.
Yes.
To review the Gazette. The Gazette notice that I think they are done in 2013 or somewhere thereabouts, and they were actually. It is the SRC that was given the orders. It seems to me that the members of parliament took it upon themselves to implement the orders.
Actually, it was not even to implement, it was to interpret, because the argument is, in that list of state officers where the deputy governors are, so are members of parliament. And so they were arguing that if it applies for the deputy governors, it should also apply
so who applies
for members of parliament. And so that is the interpretation by the Parliamentary Service Commission. And so what they did, they took that interpretation literally. And actually the Speaker of the National Assembly, who is also the chairman of the Parliamentary Service Commission, wrote to the National Treasury Principal Secretary Kamau Thuge and told him, hey, look at this, so we deserve this. And members of parliament even made a decision on how much money they thought was a house allowance to them. This was based on what they said were the rent ranges in areas that are deemed to be of high esteem or commensurate to the stature of members of parliament, 250,000. So they backdated that to October last year. Though it was subject to a 30% taxation, in May, end of May, members of parliament pocketed a cool 1.2 million or thereabout. So that is what they are contesting, because SRC went to court and managed to get conservatory orders. And that is the bone of contention currently.
But Yvonne, this sounds very interesting, that the court has said that you should get a certain, assuming this is what the court, the interpretation of what the court said, that you should get a certain amount of money from your employer, which your employer has not been paying you. So you have access to your employer's money, so you take it and say, this is actually that thing that the court was talking about. So I will not remit it, I will actually keep it.
I think at the heart of the house allowance issue is an interpretation of that court ruling by Justice Chacha Mwita. And by the way, the result of this wasn't even the MPs themselves who went to court, it was the deputy governors who went to court saying that they were not receiving house allowances unlike their fellow state officers. And then Justice Chacha Mwita ruled that deputy governors had been discriminated against and therefore should have been given the house allowance, and then directed the SRC to review and set, which would then require them to do another gazette notice. Now, in
basically appending the 2017 one that they had already done.
That's right. And now, once the PSC, that's the Parliamentary Service Commission, saw this, they then wrote, in a memorandum to the SRC, and their interpretation of the judgment was that in fact that Gazette notice of 2017 stands quashed, and we go back to 2013, which had the house allowance. And as to whether this applied to all state officers or whether Justice Chacha Mwita's ruling was specifically to deputy governors. And you find that the moment that they backdated the house allowance, it was, maybe it was cheeky, but it was to October 2018, which was the exact month that Justice Chacha Mwita had made the ruling on this issue. And that is the thing with this one. It goes back and forth. But, I also want to just talk about that 2017 Gazette notice that completely does not mention house allowance, and therefore it is not allowed. And remember, they removed quite a number of the allowances in there. Also, what I found interesting with the statement that the Parliamentary Service Commission issued today, where they were giving all the clarification and they were answering, there was something very curious there. They say that they are receiving house and committee allowances, which according to the 2017 Gazette notice would actually be illegal because it specifically scrapped housing, the plenary. So it basically said plenary. You cannot go sit in Parliament.
As one of the abolished,
yes, and it was very categorical on that, and only said that they would get sitting allowances for committees, and even there they capped it to a certain amount and a certain number.
16 actually.
16. So I find it interesting that the Parliamentary Service Commission says, oh, we're receiving house allowance, and the Gazette notice,
which therefore in effect means that in their mind they are implementing, or they are working with the Gazette notice
of 2013.
Which had basically been overridden by the Gazette notice of 2017, but according to them, the Gazette notice of 2017
was quashed by Justice Chacha Mwita.
But there has never been a new Gazette notice.
There you go, to then say what goes forward. And it seems to me like MPs then decide, okay, so this is how we're going to interpret the Constitution. Obviously, the Gazette notice and the rulings to their benefit.
Linus, this is very interesting. And from just a very basic understanding of how these things work, so the deputy governors go to court and get a certain judgment in their favor. How does someone else who is not a deputy governor benefit from that ruling? Do you just wake up and say, oh yeah, that is what was decided, or is there another process that needs to happen before you can now say, I can also benefit from this ruling that was made by the courts?
Again, it's down to the way they're interpreting it. They're interpreting this to mean they are state officers too. And there's been a bit of a debate as well on whether members of parliament are state officers or not. But because they all draw from the National Treasury, that is the definition they've been going with, and they are saying no, that was discriminatory to us too as members of Parliament.
Should they have gone to court and now said, well, following this other judgment,
no, it works okay legally this way, that you can actually take advantage of a ruling that is.
So they can say that they're state officers as well,
yes,
and that if they ruled on deputy governors,
then it applies to us as well. Okay. It's perfectly in order. But I think of note here is members of parliament, in my view, are not exactly interested to play by any rules. They are really grappling to catch every last straw, whether it's the deputy governors here or some or the 2013 Gazette notice. The fact is, what they appear to prefer to do is they want the Parliamentary Service Commission to operate independently, almost in parallel to the Salaries and Remuneration Committee, SRC. They want the PSC to be treated as a separate body that
over
can
and
actually
above the constitution.
Over and above, that can decide salaries for members of parliament, and then the SRC decides for the rest of the government departments. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately, as per the constitution.
Joe, I think it is also important that we direct our viewers to the specifics. For example, the operational Gazette notice that tells us who earns what is dated 7th of July 2017.
17 years.
So I'm looking at that Gazette notice, and it tells me that...
and I think we have some of those allowances. We can
it tells me that the Speaker of the Senate and the Speaker of the National Assembly will earn 1.1 million shillings. The Deputy Speakers in the two houses will earn 924,000 shillings. The leaders of majority and minority in both houses will earn 765,000 shillings. And then members of Parliament, Senators and National Assembly will earn 621,250 shillings. They are also entitled to a number of other allowances and benefits. For example, they will have committee sitting allowances of 5,000 shillings for the members and 8,000 shillings for the chairpersons, but this is capped at 16 sittings per month. So the maximum amount of money they can earn is 80,000 shillings. So I was
curious, Franncis, that today in that statement from PSC, they were actually saying that their pay is 535,000 shillings, not the 621.
They're focusing on the 2013 Gazette notice of the same.
Which then gives them other allowances like, plenary and all of this.
And which also then allows them to say that, hey, wait, we're not earning the 1 million shillings that you say we are. We are in fact earning less. But you see, so they're essentially saying Chacha Mwita, in that ruling on deputy governors and house allowances, completely scrapped 2017 Gazette notice and all of these remunerations you're talking about.
I doubt that is the case.
That seems to be their interpretation.
The Gazette notice has not been recalled, neither has it been quashed. So other than that...
Or have we seen a new one?
Yeah, I haven't seen at least.
Absolutely.
Then there's also the transport allowance, what you call mileage. And it is also capped at the number of kilometers return for the members of parliament and how far their constituencies are from Nairobi. If you're a member of parliament and your constituency is not at least 375 kilometers from Nairobi, you don't qualify for any. And for such members, 375 up to 750 kilometers maximum return is 266,000.
That's in a month, eh?
That is in a month.
Okay.
And the highest is grade E, which is 751 kilometers one way, which would make it about 1,500, and they will earn 738,833. That is, for example, a member of parliament from Mandera or from Wajir constituency or even Turkana. The question is, how much do members of parliament earn? They also get over 300,000 shillings in car maintenance allowance, which is a one-off pay, but they are subjected to a taxation of up to 30%. The question is, do members of parliament deserve more? I don't know. Do the members of parliament have a point when they say, give us more? I don't know. But the question is, if they decide in one way or another to award themselves allowances and any benefit, then it is illegal, because the body mandated by the constitution to decide who earns what,
to set,
actually
set and review, right,
and decide by this is the amount of money that you can earn is SRC. So this conflict between the Parliamentary Service Commission and SRC is a conflict that has the potential to make other commissions also say, we too.
Let's hear what the Speaker himself of the National Assembly has been saying about this.
The members of parliament are the only category of state officers that SRC has discriminated against. We would want to know why. Unless SRC does not think that members of parliament have any use, in which case then Kenyans should be asked to do away with parliament. Yes, we must be sensitive to the current economic situation in the country. Yes, and that I admit. But let us not be selective and or discriminatory.
So,
and
here's the point.
Yes, but something problematic about the argument that they put forth is that everybody else is getting it, us too. Wouldn't it be interesting to hear the reverse? That, listen, we're not getting these because remember, again, they're the ones who oversight all of these other arms of government. It's curious that they're getting, so we should. You're not hearing the reverse argument, which is, if we're not getting, then they shouldn't either. It's me too, me too, me too, me too.
And isn't that why
which is interesting?
Why people find it easy to throw stones at them, as opposed to focusing on everyone else?
Because if they truly cared about Mwananchi,
they can change more things than everybody
they would then say, look, let's take a look at judiciary. They're earning the house allowance, let's remove that. They're earning this, let's remove that. Let's bring the wage bill down across the three arms of government, as opposed to let's increase it because everybody else is earning the same. And it's you can't compare. I mean, anyway, they're all state
and they can do that sometimes for frivolous reasons. And you can see what they've been telling the SRC, that now we should make those positions non-permanent so that they can just be drawing allowances, so you don't have a commission.
Remember, they cut their budget by 95 million shillings?
Yes.
In the supplementary budget.
Because
yes, they can be that.
And they were saying that's what they were going to use for the court cases that they had.
Wow. That is punitive. Well, it's within their mandate to make laws, but they ought to be bigger than that. What I did not hear from the Speaker of the National Assembly, Muturi, there is anything to do with the memorandum that is being cited as containing these new demands. The memorandum dated 31st of January this year.
Yes.
I think we have a copy.
The memorandum is there.
Yes.
The copy is right
both
here.
in soft and hard copy.
Right.
But what many people have also not looked at is the response from the Salaries and Remuneration Commission in relation to that memorandum.
Yeah.
And SRC told members of Parliament that we cannot respond to any of the demands that you're making because there's a matter in court.
Right.
Once that matter is dealt with, then now we can engage in this. It's not that members of Parliament have not received or have not awarded themselves these allowances, the 17 allowances that they are claiming yet. What they were basically doing is to put a case to SRC that we deserve this. Even saying that, for example, in terms of hierarchy, they deserve to be remunerated higher than Court of Appeal judges. And that is the point at which the Speaker is saying that we are discriminated. But the question is, SRC also stands accused of behind-the-scene deals or underhand deals. For example, when SRC is accused of allowing members of the cabinet, that is cabinet secretaries, to draw 300,000 shillings in ministerial allowances, which is not reflected in the SRC Gazette notice, then there's a problem that SRC needs to deal with. They need to come clear and say, do members of the cabinet receive this? And then also, there's a memo from SRC to the Judicial Service Commission giving judges, actually all judges and magistrates, a special duty allowance of between 150,000 shillings and 130,000 shillings. And so these are some of the reasons why the Parliamentary Service Commission is saying, you are giving them, you're not giving us. So now SRC needs to come clear and say, this is what judges earn, this is what cabinet secretaries earn, this is what members of Parliament earn, so that Kenyans can now decide who earns more, who doesn't deserve more.
But this is an oversight body.
Yes.
National Assembly, Senate. You can ask questions of any institution in the country, including the SRC. It shouldn't come out as a Me Too thing.
Yes.
It should be raised as a substantive question. For example, SRC come clean on how much cabinet secretaries are earning. Are they entitled to house allowances? How much, in terms of allowances, do they draw when they're going out on assignments and things like that? Do they have night outs, like members of Parliament are denying of asking? These are the questions that the Parliamentary Service Commission, through the Parliament, is not asking.
And actually, Linus, you're exactly right, because what I've noticed is that the only time that members of Parliament speak about this so-called discrimination is when there's an issue of their pay on the table. We have never seen an independent conversation started in Parliament that says, hey, there is actually a problem with the amount of money judiciary is being paid, the allowances that ministers, cabinet secretaries are getting, and that sort of thing. Because I think it would be a more, Kenyans would be more receptive to a conversation like that when it is not tied to their own pay, where they're actually saying that as the oversight body that is constitutionally mandated, so this is what we think is happening with the cabinet or with the judiciary. But it usually comes up when there is an allowance that they're probably trying to give themselves, and then we raise questions, then they will say, no, actually, you know what, we're not the only ones who are getting this. Look at judiciary, look at whoever else. And I think that is perhaps one of the reasons why people are not exactly enthusiastic about hearing what the members of parliament are saying.
Yeah, and just to give you, a little perspective of the other three arms of government and the amount of money that they're spending, and this is not just on salaries and perks, but just general operations. If you take a look at the last financial year, parliamentary spending was a fraction of the whole expenditure. So they had about 26 billion out of 2.1 trillion of the entire expenditure of the three arms of government. So if you do a percentage, that shows you that Parliament's expenditure generally on everything was about 1.3%. 52% of the expenditure was done by the executive. And those are also some of the places that we need to start checking, because if we're saying punguza mzigo, then it needs to be across the board. When you take a look at some of those monies, State House itself gets 8 billion a year. The Deputy President's Office gets 2 billion. Interior gets 109 billion. We should also be taking a look at just the expenditure in these other arms of government, not to mention the judiciary as well.
Absolutely. And Joe, you know what? The issue, we need to take a break, but this is probably what we should take a break as we ponder about. How much money does the country incur every financial year in the wage bill? Over 700 billion shillings. How much money is paid to members of parliament in terms of this wage bill? Just a fraction of it. So while we may say members of parliament should not, and actually they should not in any way increase their allowances or their salaries, but we must also extend this discussion and ask, where is the real burden? Maybe as a country we will have a better discussion.
Yes, that is a good place to end, because when we come back we'll be talking about kupunguza mzigo. So mzigo kwa wapi tutaangalia. All right, when we come back.